Hello, everyone. We have a rare but exciting full house. Boom. And in a moment, we'll be joined by a very, very, very special guest, the one, the only Draft Utopia himself, Mr. Chris Ransom. We're going to have a very, very full show. We might have a super secret, extra special guest also joining us after. But let's get into it. Brock, you're going to be with us for only a short time. Tell people why.
Yes, because I am on assignment today for Team NBS Media. I'll only be on here for about another 12 minutes because I have to go and cover UNLV football. Tonight they take on Boise State at Allegiant Stadium, 7:30 West Coast time. And this game has big importance because not only is it for first place in the Mountain West, I could potentially give the winner home field advantage in the Mountain West Championship game should they make it. This will also determine who gets eliminated tonight from potential college football playoff qualifications. As we all know, there's the 12-team playoff this year. One of those teams will be a non-Power 5 automatic qualifier. Both UNLV and Boise State, courtesy of losses to Liberty and James Madison, are the front runners for that position. Both teams sit with one loss. UNLV at 6-1. Their one loss at home to Syracuse. Boise State is at 5-1. Their loss on the road to Oregon. Also, Heisman consideration, Ashton Jeanty for Boise State is set to take the field tonight. He is averaging, I believe, over 150 yards per game rushing. Honestly, one of the most bizarre stat lines we've ever seen. And then on the other side for UNLV, Ricky White, he has 3 blocked punts on the season, a blocked punt returned for a touchdown, and he has just been a monster in the receiving game. For all of you NFL draft lovers, this is going to be a great game to start scouting some really high potential non-Power 5 prospects. Alongside Jeanty, you have Ahmad Hassain for Boise State defensive end, who's an excellent player. You also have on the opposite side Jackson Woodard, a linebacker, Jalen Catalong at defensive back, and of course Haj Malik Williams at quarterback. Big game for many reasons. UNLV is expecting over 38,000 fans in attendance. What better way to spend a Friday night? That's all I got to say. Billy, you are muted.
Good point. So it's an exciting night for a lot of reasons. And Greg, you seem to have a slightly different analysis of the game than Brock does. What was it you were saying earlier about the way you saw the game playing out?
Mr. Jeanty is going to dominate the UNLV Running Rebels tonight. That's simply not in question to me. Through 6 games, the man has 1,248 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns. The only other running back to have over 1,000 yards this year is Caleb Johnson of the Iowa Hawkeyes, and he's played an extra game already. Mr. Jeanty is currently on track to surpass Oklahoma State Cowboy and former Detroit Lion Barry Sanders. So yeah, he's on pace. He's definitely been a tremendous story, and he played his high school football in Frisco, Texas, which means the Dallas Cowboys already know about him. And don't you clowns ever say a word about us dropping another running back in the first round. It's going to happen again.
It's going to happen again. It's going to make no difference to the Cowboys, just like Jeanty. It's probably going to make a difference tonight because UNLV has one of the best defenses in the G5. And trust me when I say they will contain it. And when Boise State is fortunate to throw the ball, you will see how ineffective they will be passing.
And Ashton Jeanty is also a great receiver as well out of the backfield.
UNLV has some of the best defensive backs in all of college football, so I have zero concern. Keep in mind, Barry Odom, one of the premier defensive minds, is on the Rebels head coach.
The Boise State Broncos are going to beat the Running Rebels tonight.
They're not going to beat the Running Rebels tonight. UNLV will win this one 35-32.
Brock, I know you don't have much more time, so I want to make sure you got to ask Chris at least a few questions. So I'm going to let you fire off a few questions to Chris, and then you could let us know about the rest of your evening. So what are your first 2 questions for him?
Chris, I think we'll start off with a question on everybody's mind in the draft. How many first-round graded quarterbacks do you currently have, and how many quarterbacks could you see right now going in the first round?
I've got only one, and that is Cam Ward of the Miami Hurricanes. I have him at 8th on my board. The next best QB is Shedeur Sanders. I have him around 52, but he will probably go in the first round. I think a third quarterback that probably gets overdrafted is Carson Beck out of Georgia. I heard the Titans have 3 quarterbacks with first-round grades. Those 3 are the quarterbacks I just mentioned, Ward, Sanders, and Carson Beck.
So, Chris, I wanna kind of go off of that because Tennessee is a very interesting case. They just traded away DeAndre Hopkins. They don't really have a future with Will Levis, but at the same time, they have a lot more holes that they need to address. Could we legitimately see Tennessee taking a quarterback in the first round this year, or do you think they're going to prioritize other needs?
I think the Titans are going to get a quarterback in the first round. I don't think they should. I think there's other positions they should target, but if they're drafting high enough for Shadur, Beck, or Ward, they're probably going to pick their guy.
So, Chris, obviously last year, we don't know the draft order yet, so it's hard to say. But at this point in the evaluation process, last year we saw an absolute run on offensive players to start the draft last year. Due to the lack of first-round graded quarterbacks, do you think we're going to see the same thing this year, or are defensive players going to be selected a lot higher than they were in 2024?
I think we're going to see a run on offensive tackles and cornerbacks. That's what I think we're going to see to start the draft. I mean, I've got 3 corners in my top 6. Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison, Travis Hunter. I have all of them in my top 6. Will Campbell's my number 1 player at the moment. But I do have Texas tackle Kelvin Banks at 10, and I've got a late first on Josh Cotterly with Emory Jones and Ursery, the Minnesota left tackle, in the second round. So those 2 could get pushed up as well as Cotterly. But I do think we're going to see a cornerback run, a receiver run, and a tackle run very early in this draft. And I think we'll see a quarterback run. I think teams are going to be more hesitant with edge rushers. The only edge I really liked on tape in the summer was Mikael Williams. And, I mean, Nick Scorton has warmed up. I have warmed up to him as a prospect, but at the same token, I feel like he's more of a mid-first round pick rather than this top 10, top 5 guy the media's hyping him up to be, draft Twitter's hyping him up to be. So that's where I stand on that.
So kind of going off of what you just said, let's mostly talk about the quarterbacks. Obviously, you mentioned Benjamin Morrison. Do you believe that his injury will drastically affect his draft stock?
Can you repeat that?
Do you believe Benjamin Morrison's injury history will drastically affect his draft stock?
It might. I think it's going to come down to how his medicals are revealed at the combine. I think that's going to be what decides whether his stock stays where it's at or goes down. Because you look at Morrison right now, and I think that's a player who could go up or down depending on the medicals at the combine.
Kind of going back to the cornerback position, one of the names that I have had circled in the preseason as a guy that I could see being a first rounder as well, but maybe a little bit later in the draft, is Jabbar Muhammad. Could you share your thoughts about the Oregon corner?
I mean, I had Milroe as my QB2 after the Georgia game, but he's played badly the last 3 weeks to the point where he's sort of reverted into that third-round status.
Gotcha. My final question before I have to get out of here, I'm going to go back to the quarterbacks. Obviously, we always see teams overtake quarterbacks in terms of the draft position. And one of those guys that I think is going to be drafted a bit higher than he should is Kyle McCord. What is your evaluation of McCord, especially after a horrific performance last night against Pitt?
I've had a UDFA grade on McCord since he was at Ohio State last year. I've got Will Howard in the 7th round right now at the moment. But, you know, it looked like McCord was gaining some traction early in the season with Syracuse, but that has not sustained. And I think we're going to see, after the 5-interception game against Pitt, I think we're going to see his stock go back to where it was when he was at Ohio State last year.
Okay, actually, I have one final follow-up question. That's because of tonight. Ashton Jeanty, where do you see him going? Or what position, what round, what pick? What are your thoughts?
I mocked him to Dallas at 26 in July. I don't think he slides that far now, though. That's the crazy thing. Now, Dallas has the opportunity to draft him in the mid-teens, they will certainly pull the trigger, no doubt about that. But I'm looking at some of the teams in the top 10. Maybe Denver gets him. Maybe the Browns look at him if they trade out of the spot they're in and Nick Chubb leaves. I think there's a few potential landing spots for Ashton Jeanty at the top of this draft. As far as where he could end up going, I would not rule out the Vikings as a dark horse if they do not want to. Aaron Jones, I don't know if he's under contract for multi-years, but if it's only a one-year deal, that is a landing spot for Jeanty. I can see the Commanders getting him, or the Texans even. I mean, there's just a lot of teams that need running backs right now. If the Jaguars let ETN walk, if the Steelers let Najee walk, those are some dark horse teams. But Dallas would be my front runner for Jeanty still at this time.
Gotcha. Before I go,
we're not going to know until the end of the year when the order's finalized.
Of course. Before I head out, I just want to remind everyone, when it comes to the running back position, there's two similar running backs to Jeanty, Bijan Robinson, and Jameer Gibbs, both taken within the top 12 of their respective drafts. Gentlemen, I have to go. I want to wish you all the best. I want to thank everyone for watching, and enjoy the rest of the show with Mr. Bill Carroll, Greg, and Chris. Deuces, everyone.
Okay. Well, that knocks us down to 3, which is fine. I'm going to have some questions for Chris as well. So we are now far enough into the season where at least our preliminary rankings are starting to sort of take shape. So what do you think is the deepest, strongest group position-wise? I like the corner class. It sounds like you like it a great deal. Are there other groups that you really like amongst this draft class?
I think defensive tackle and running back are probably the two deepest positions where I think you could probably find talent this year in rounds 1 through 7. I think you could make that case for edge rusher as well at defensive end. I mean, those are the 3 positions where I feel like it's the deepest. I think it's a weaker wide receiver draft than last year. I mean, I feel like after the first 9 receivers, after Ricky White, there is a big drop-off between him and the next best receiver. I've got Ricky White in the 3rd round, late 3rd, UNLV receiver. He's going to be playing Boise tonight. But, yeah, after him at wide receiver 9, I think there's a big drop-off between a guy who could develop into wide receiver 1 and the next best guy in the draft. And I feel like you're either getting a Anthony Schwartz or you're getting a Jacoby Myers if you're lucky on day 3. I mean, I think that's how big of a crapshoot day 3 of the draft is at receiver this year.
Okay.
Tight end's a deep position too. We did that last Saturday's podcast. I think you could get a tight end in rounds 1 through 4, a starting tight end in rounds 1 through 4. It's a very deep tight end draft. I don't think it's as starstruck as 23 or 24, but it is a good tight end draft.
Who's your number 1 tight end right now?
Loveland, but I think Harold Fannin Jr. of Bowling Green is closing that gap on Mr. Loveland. So Loveland's going to have to step it up when Michigan plays Penn State, because if he doesn't, I think Fannon's coming for that tight end 1 spot, and he's not going to give it back, because right now Fannin would be the John Mackey winner.
That school up north does not get to play Penn State this year, so there you have it. That school up north gets beaten tomorrow by Michigan State as well. Thank you very much. Can you tell I don't like that school up north? Can you tell?
I don't like that school up north either. I'm an Ohio State fan, so
there you go.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you mentioned Fannin. I'm a big fan as well. I fell in love with him a little while back. Tell me about some things that you like about Fannin, and why do you think he has a chance to maybe even be tight end 1?
Fannin reminds me a lot of Isaiah Likely, and he's making a lot of spectacular catches, one-handed catches in traffic that I have not seen Loveland make. I think Loveland's got a better route tree, but as far as explosiveness and ability to make incredible catches or catches in traffic, I would give the edge to Fannin in that respect, Bill. Yeah. And he also has the number 1 run blocking grade on Pro Football Focus too, which I felt sort of warrants mentioning. Not a lot, but some degree it does warrant mentioning.
Yeah, I like Fannin's run after catch. I like how competitive and tough he is at the catch point. I would like to see him be used more like Loveland's used, where he, shows you the ability to run, the Y sail stuff and, the
But
dig.
he can do all that in the All-Star game, and he'll be just fine. Thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
the,
No, I agree. I agree that he
but
can.
Players don't need, and I said this before about Tyler Linderbaum. He did not need to go out and play a different type of center than he was playing at Iowa. He was capable of playing any type of center position you wanted him to play. And again, what the Iowa Hawkeyes had him doing was right for that program. This whole nonsense about I haven't seen this player do this or do that. These kids don't get the chance to do everything that everybody wants to see. Well, tough luck. That's what the All-Star games are for.
And ladies and gentlemen,
Exactly.
that is why
Exactly, Greg.
that's why the Master Gunnery Sergeant was a Marine.
I want
But yeah, go ahead,
to
Chris.
add something to Greg's point briefly here. Okay, when Jalen Hurts was at Oklahoma, everybody thought he could only make 1 to 2 reads. He went to the Senior Bowl. He cleaned up his footwork. He showed the ability to make 5 out of 6 progressions in Mobile, and he put the progression issue to bed for good. And the Eagles took him in the second round. And their Southwest scout is now on the Cleveland Browns. So I'm wondering if that scout leaked the Shedeur Sanders is better than Joe Burrow intel back in August, because Jordan Reed got that intel from an anonymous AFC North scout. He's not going to reveal his sources, so Ravens and Bengals wouldn't say that about their own quarterback. So that intel clearly came from Pittsburgh or Cleveland, and my guess is it came from Cleveland, Bill.
I love when they get into the whole psyop speculation part of Draft Twitter. We all get. Occasionally, I get anonymous leaks, and I'm not the kind of person that likes to even talk about them. I'll use it as part of my figuring out who I like or things I hear about players, but I don't like to run and report stuff that I can't substantiate by giving someone's name to it. But here's what I will say: there's going to be lots of intrigue around the quarterback class, but even though it's not a particularly good one, that's not going to stop the intrigue. In fact, it might increase the intrigue because people are going to try to find ways to differentiate between guys who maybe don't have that quite enough elite level play and or talent to push themselves into that position. I want to talk about 1 or 2 more positions before we go. Well, maybe more than 2. What do you think of the safety class? And I think I could probably guess, but you are sometimes different. I don't know who your number 1 safety is, but that's right. And then talk about the linebackers. People don't seem to be very high on this linebacker group, but you may be different from other people.
Yeah, I mean, the safety draft, I love the safety draft. I told you this earlier, Bill. I got 3 safeties with first-round grades, and those 3 are Malachi Starks, Xavier Watts, Sebastian Castro out of Iowa is my dark horse to sneak into the first round. So those are my 3 first-round safeties at the moment. I think there's a lot of good safeties, though, in the second, third round. I think we could see as many as 10 or 11 safeties, maybe 12 come off the board by day 2.
Wow.
And
that would be...
As I wrote in my Big Ten article, Sebastian Castro is definitely going to be drafted early in this draft. I don't know why people aren't talking enough about that young man. He's a spectacular safety. Of course, Malachi Starks plays for Georgia, so he gets the SEC rose-colored glasses put on him. Yes, he's a very good safety. But again, Xavier Watts is also an incredible safety. As I said to you last week, Bill, before the Notre Dame game, that Xavier Watts would have a pick. Oh, darn if he didn't have one. Oh.
Yeah, you almost called your shot, Greg. You almost called your shot.
Well, yeah, I had the wrong corner with the pick 6. Yeah.
Got it. Linebacker group. Who do you like and why? And what do you think of the class as a whole, Chris?
I think this is a really weak linebacker draft, I'll be honest. I mean, I like some of the edge rushers as outside linebackers. I think James Pierce Jr. as an outside linebacker might be the best fit. I think all my linebackers I think I have 3rd-round grades on all my linebackers this year, Bill. Like, I don't even have a linebacker in the first 2 rounds. And, yeah. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with this linebacker draft because, frankly, I'm down on this draft. I think Deontay Lawson at 65 might be the top linebacker on my board, Alabama linebacker. And he wasn't great against Tennessee last week. He made some nice plays in the first half, but really struggled in that second half.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I am with you very much on that.
And the Clemson linebacker that everybody's been high on has not impressed me at all. And when the Pitt Panthers get a hold of Clemson and destroy Dabo Swinney's hopes and dreams this year, I'll be a happy man.
Yes, well, it's good to hear that you're consistent about your feelings about Dabo Swinney. Okay, I want to turn to interior offensive line. Everyone loves the tackle class. I still really like this interior offensive line. I like the guards, I like the centers.
I like the guard class more, I'm being honest, Bill.
Well, let's hear it. Who do you like about the interior offensive line?
As far as the guard group, I had Tate Ratledge as my top guard back in August. I think Tyler Booker's gained a lot of traction for Alabama this year. I had him as guard 4 at the beginning of the year. I now have him as guard 2. I have a first-round grade on Clay Webb, the Jacksonville State left guard. He really blew me away. He was making the South Carolina defensive tackles his inmate when watching the 2023 tape of Clay Webb at Jacksonville State. He looked good against Louisville, looked good against Thor Griffith. So, I mean, I have a first-round grade on Clay Webb. I think he is going to be the biggest riser for Mobile. I think more scouts are going to have first-round grades on Webb by the time we're done with the 25 Senior Bowl. And I also have a late first of Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. I have him ahead of Josh Simmons, even though there's a lot of traction for Josh Simmons. There was until his season-ending injury. So I've got those 4 guards in the first round. And I think there's some guys in this day 2 that I like. Logan Parr as a day 2 pick out of SMU. So I think it's a really good guard draft.
Oh, you muted yourself there, Bill.
I didn't mean to mute myself.
No, that was me. He's right. I agree. It's a good interior group. I like the centers and the guards. I think that some of those guys who are currently centers may be asked to play guard and vice versa at the next level. And of course, especially early in your career, if you're a backup, they're going to ask you to do both because it enables them to dress 7 guys, or some teams dress 8. But they need at least one of those people to be able to play guard and center. So some of the guys who aren't playing the other position will soon be learning to do so if they haven't already been repping it out. Okay, a couple more positions I wanted to talk about, and then we'll talk about this upcoming week of games. Of course, being an Ohio State fan, I will have to talk to you about some of the rumblings I'm hearing from Columbus. Sometimes I think it's just noise, but sometimes maybe more. So the positions that we haven't had to really delve into, and I want to get a little bit of a chance to delve into. You said you're not blown away by the wide receiver group. You like the running back group. Everyone's down on the quarterbacks. Tackles will be a huge tackle run early in the top 50, 60. I think everyone agrees with that. Guards and centers are solid. You mentioned the defensive tackle group. You mentioned the edge rushers, linebackers. But now nickel has become a separate position, as maybe it should have been. Tell me about what you think about the nickel/hybrid, whatever you want to call it, position. The guys are going to be playing sometimes in the box, sometimes in the middle, sometimes in the slot at the next level. Maybe think of them, and who's your number 1?
This is a really strong cornerback draft. I mean, we mentioned some of the top guys at the beginning of the show, but there's some other guys that you can get later in the draft. I think Malachi Moore out of Alabama is one. Another safety I like that might be able to move to nickel corner is Jonas Sanker out of Virginia. I mean, he's got to put up more of a fight than this Cavalier back line. I mean, I had a top 10 grade on one of Virginia's center backs in the MLS draft, and Pitt scored 4 goals on Virginia in the first half. So obviously, I screwed that up. Even I have imperfections. But back to football. There's Jordan Hancock of Ohio State. I like Siobhan Revel, even though he suffered a season-ending injury. Takerio Davis is another guy. This is a good nickel corner draft, and it's a great corner draft if you're looking for talent on the outside.
Yeah, I think most people agree. I think most people like the group as a whole. Okay, now we can start. We've talked enough about prospects, at least for the moment. We can now talk about the games. As an Ohio State fan, it seems like at least once a year, people want to call for the firing of Ryan Day, no matter what. At least once a year, Ryan Day's head gets called for. where are you on the future of Ryan Day and this season thus far for Ohio State? Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if that question about Ryan Day was redirected towards Greg or myself. It was
No,
redirected
it's
towards
definitely
me.
directed towards you,
So
Chris.
I will answer the question with Ryan Day. He has got to get Ohio State to the playoff or he is gone. I mean, if he loses to Michigan again, we're essentially going to have to make the national title or at least the Final Four just for him to get consideration for another year. I just think that's where we're at with Ryan Day. As good of a recruiter he is, the results have been less than satisfactory. Obviously, if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, this loss to Oregon is a nothing burger, and he'll probably keep his job another year.
I hate to disappoint you, but they're going to Happy Valley and they're going to lose this year to the Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm sorry, it's happening. Penn State is deep enough. They have enough talent on that defense to stop the two running backs, and Ibuka and the young other receiver there can also be stopped. And Will Howard, I'm sorry, he doesn't impress me all that much as a quarterback. So Ohio State, I'm sorry to say, will not be making the national championship, and Ryan Day gets fired, gone.
You keep saying sorry to say, Greg, but you don't sound very sorry.
No, I'm not.
misjudging you.
I'm not very sorry because
I've heard Allers looked a lot better this year, but I haven't seen Aller play this season.
See, look, I'm not wearing my Notre Dame stuff, but I do have my Penn State hoodie, and yes, I support Penn State.
You obviously do. Okay, so let's talk about the slate of games. Obviously, we already had a little preview of the big game out west, which of course is happening or about to happen. It hasn't already kicked off between UNLV and Boise State. We got to talk to Brock about that game. We haven't talked to Chris about that game, so I guess we should talk to Chris about that game as well. How do you see that game playing out, Chris?
I have Boise State winning, and it's because of one guy, Ashton Jeanty. But if UNLV can stop Jeanty and Ricky White can go off and Barry Odom's defense shows up, the Rebels have a chance to steal this game. And I will certainly say this much. As soon as I get back to my apartment from this Pitt soccer game, I am watching UNLV Boise State. I don't care for the Dodgers. I don't care for the Yankees. So, frankly, they're not going to get my attention unless it's a deciding game of the World Series, like a game-clinching game. I want to make that the lowest-rated World Series in history, but that's going to be a challenge with how exciting of a matchup that is. But I think Ricky White, if he could show up and UNLV, Barry Odom, that defense stops Jeanty, they got a chance to steal this one.
Okay. Let's move on to other games on the schedule. And I am excited, obviously, like everyone else, about that game. But I wanted to delve into Greg has already opined about the sturdy midshipman facing his Fighting Irish. I won't ask him to rehash, though I'm sure he will at some point. But I'm going to start with you. What do you see happening in Navy Notre Dame? And are there any prospects you'd like to shout out for that game? Can you hear me, Chris?
As far as Navy and Notre Dame goes, I think that's going to be a big game, but I think Notre Dame's defense is just too much for Navy to handle.
Okay, good. See, that should put a smile in your heart, Greg. Chris,
I don't like Notre Dame and Navy playing 97 times and all that other jazz because, of course, as you know, being a former Marine, the Navy was the department we were under and all that jazz. Yeah. So I have to support the midshipmen, especially when they go against that place that you like, that West Point punch. But that's later on in the year. But I agree with Chris. The Notre Dame defense will be too much for Navy to handle. And I do believe that the quarterback from Navy will give up a couple of interceptions. And that will be the key thing here. As long as Riley Leonard does what he did last week, throw for over 200 yards without being all over the field, Notre Dame wins this game pretty handily.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk Ole Miss, Oklahoma. earlier, like before the season began, this was a big spotlight game. People thought that maybe both teams might be undefeated coming into this game. That has not turned out to be the case. But once again, Chris, what do you think about this game? And you, once again, if you'd like to shout out any prospects that are going to be in this game, that's fine.
What game is
Ole
this
Miss.
again?
Oh, I was going to ask you, Chris, about Oklahoma versus Ole Miss. That was a game that preseason.
Oklahoma versus Ole Miss. I mean,
Correct.
that game had a lot more traction in the preseason compared
Yes,
to now.
correct.
And I still think it could be a good game, but it's going to come down to what can Jackson Dart do? What can the defense do? That's really going to be the deciding factor in that
Any
contest.
any prospects you like in that game?
I mean, for day one, probably not. I think there's a few day two guys in that game. Jackson Dart, Princely Umania. There's the Oklahoma receivers, Nick Anderson, Dion. They have Dion something, I forget, another receiver on Oklahoma. Dion Burks maybe, but I'm not too excited about that game, I'll be honest.
I got you. Well, that game has lost so many, as you said. I said it was a game that people had circled because they thought it might be almost like a play-in game for the playoffs because they thought both teams might even be undefeated. And of course, that's not the case. But preseason, people hyped that game up a lot. Okay, let's keep rolling. Here's a game that probably deserves more hype than it's received. Washington, Indiana. That most people didn't see this coming with Indiana. Shout out to Kirk Signetti. Once again, if there's any prospects you want to mention, you can do so now. But tell me how you see that game playing out, Chris.
I mean, Indiana's got a really good receiver in Surratt and Curtis Rourke, former Ohio quarterback, transferring to Indiana. So I like the Hoosiers to win. They're going to be 8-0. I think they're going to handle business quite soundly against the Washington Huskies.
And this is the point where Greg mentions he's Canadian.
Well, yes, but Curtis Rourke is also not going to be playing tomorrow. So
that's true.
He has a thumb injury, so he's not going to be playing tomorrow. But the backup quarterback who went in last week is going to be just enough for the Hoosiers to beat the Huskies tomorrow.
Yeah, they're pretty deep. That's the thing I think is the biggest surprise to me is that Indiana's depth, right? I think it's what separates this Indiana team maybe from Indiana teams we've seen in the past is their depth.
Well,
okay.
Coach Signetti brought 13 guys over with him from James Madison. So there's the reason why that team has depth.
Right. And none of those 13 are bad. Okay, so we talked about Ohio State. Let's hit this again. Nebraska obviously is a little better than maybe they have been in the past, but I think they're still not quite all the way there. But what do you see for the Nebraska-Ohio State game, Chris?
I mean, Dylan Raiola's got to score more than 7 against Ohio State, but our defense is a lot more lethal than Indiana's, so he might get held to 3 or 6 points. Who knows? But Tui Malo out, Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams. I really like that defensive line up front, and I like the quarterback tandem as well of Denzel Burke and Jordan Whitehead. I'm thinking of Jordan Hancock. Those two corners. You got Nathan Ransom at safety. I think they're a lot better than advertised. But, Nebraska's going to have to figure out a way to stop that offense. Their defense, because I don't think Raiola can outduel Ohio State's offense with how good our defense is.
Yes, and in a battle of two ranked teams, Oregon being ranked surprises nobody. Some people are surprised that Illinois is as good as it's been. Brett Bielema is having his best start to a season so far down in Champaign, Urbana. And, of course, they're about to run into a bit of a bust on Oregon. But once again, if there's any prospects you want to mention, feel free to do so. But how do you see the Oregon-Illinois game playing out?
I think Oregon's receivers are going to be the difference makers for this one. Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, I think the receivers are going to be the difference. I do have a third on Dylan Gabriel at the moment, but you want to see better decision-making from him. And you look at Illinois, they do have Zachary Franklin at receiver. So I think the receiver, Zachary Franklin, Jabbar Muhammad's probably the most entertaining matchup of this one. as far as the one-on-ones go.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I don't, as much as obviously Illinois is near and dear to my heart. It's where I got my master's degree, where I'm the graduate assistant. It doesn't look good. I still think this game will be closer than some people might think. I think they'll keep it close. They seem to have a good sense of how to keep even better teams from running away with games. But yeah, they probably won't have enough to stay with them long term. Three more ranked on ranked games I want to hit on. We have Missouri versus Alabama. Now, once again, in the preseason, this game wasn't being treated with that much interest. But now that people smell blood in the water with Alabama, Missouri fans are starting to pop off a little bit online, which you don't usually see when these games are coming up. How do you think this game might play out in terms of the Tigers versus the Crimson Tide?
This is just thinking, who's playing Alabama?
Missouri.
Missouri. That's right. Missouri's hosting Alabama. Alabama's freshman corners are going to have their hands full with Luther Burden. I am picking Alabama to win, but this feels like a 20-17 field goal type game where Alabama barely prevails at the end.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think this is, if Alabama rights the ship, this is the week that starts it. Now, once again, because of the standards they have, even if they run the table from this point forward, they'll still be whining and complaining. But this could be sort of a place where they can resettle themselves as a program. Another ranked on ranked battle: LSU versus Texas A&M. We have a top 10 team versus a top 15 team. How do you see that game playing out? And once again, there's some prospects in that game. Who are some of the guys you like?
LSU offensive tackles versus Nick Scorton. That's the number one-on-one matchup. Scorton versus Will Campbell. Scorton versus Emory Jones. That's got to be the number one matchup as far as one-on-ones go. Also, these are the only two SEC teams without an SEC conference loss left, thanks to Georgia losing to Alabama. I still think Georgia's the best team in the conference, but this game could go a long way in deciding who ultimately ends up playing Georgia, because if LSU gets by Alabama, I could see them finishing the regular season with one loss. That loss coming to USC. I might have to go. I might have to turn. Okay.
Do you have Will Campbell going as a guard in the NFL, Chris?
Who?
Because of his, do you have Will Campbell going in as a guard to the NFL?
No, not at all. Not at all. I am going in the NFL as a tackle. That could change if the arm length is lower than advertised at the combine, but right now he's a tackle for me. That's not going to change.
Okay, because I've of course heard that the arm length is only 32 inches, so that puts him, a couple of inches shy of being tackle ready. But again, these measurements don't mean everything, and people get too hung up.
Yeah, and I think his arms are longer than Skarotsky, so that's why I'm not putting as much stock into it.
Yeah.
I mean, Skarotsky, I think, was 31 7/8. I would imagine Will Campbell's going to be longer than that. I don't know if he'll be 32, 33, 34, 35, but I would imagine his arm length is going to be longer than that. So.
And Bill, you put yourself on mute again.
Got it. So that brings us to our next ranked on ranked battle. The surprising Vanderbilt Commodores are going to face Texas in a game that, once again, preseason probably didn't get that much attention, but is more interesting to us now. Tell me about how you think that game plays out, and once again, Chris, are there any prospects you're excited about in Texas advancing?
Well, I mean, you got Quinn Ewers and Kelvin Banks from Texas. Vanderbilt's quarterback's been playing surprisingly well this year in some upset wins against Virginia Tech and Alabama. I don't think they pull it off this week, but they put a fence up against Texas on the Texas side of Vanderbilt. Hey,
Gotcha. I'm going to knock on a few more of these games that I think are of interest to me. game that's not ranked on ranked, but it's an interesting game because it has lots of different kinds of implications, is BYU UCF, who are now, conference foes. It sounds weird to say that because BYU was an independent for a while. They were in the WAC for a while. But now, they found a new conference home. UCF, once again, was an independent, was a member of a couple of different conferences, now finds itself in the Big 12. But how do you think this game plays out and why in BYU UCF?
What game is this?
BYU UCF, Central Florida versus BYU.
I mean, I'm taking BYU, but I was very tempted to take Central Florida in the upset because Central Florida's got KJ Jefferson, RJ Harvey, and if they can run the ball in BYU like Ole Gordon did, they could steal this game. You could make an argument Central Florida's the best 3-4 team in the country, and they did start 3-0 before the 4-game losing streak. So I'm not ruling out Central Florida pulling an upset, but I like BYU to win.
Yeah, I like BYU to win. I like UCF denying them a cover. For those that care about that stuff.
I agree with that.
BYU has such old men that you're playing against, and that's because of their 2-year missions and all that other jazz. And that's what makes BYU a very tough team to play in the regular season. And if Malzone can actually keep his ground game going and keep the BYU offense off that field, UCF could win this game.
Exactly. But I think BYU is going to win.
Another game that features new conference rivals, SMU and BYU, a couple of private schools.
Not BYU. No, SMU is not playing BYU. BYU.
No, I said Duke.
SMU's playing Duke.
Yes. Yeah, Duke.
Did I say? Oh, I meant Duke. I thought I said Duke. Okay. But yeah, Duke and SMU, a couple of private schools that will be facing each other now as conference rivals. Once again, are the prospects that excite you in that game, Chris? And how do you think that game plays?
I mean, I like Logan Parr. I have a second-round grade on SMU's left guard. They do have a good defensive end. I mean, they've got some decent receivers. Their tight end, RJ, he suffered a season-ending injury. That's unfortunate. But I had a 5th-round grade on SMU's tight end. I was looking forward to seeing him against Duke. That's not going to happen. I hope Logan Parr makes this game exciting because at this point it feels, honestly, an SMU Duke soccer game sounds more exciting than this game. But if Logan Parr can step up, these quarterbacks can continue to play at a high level, maybe this game will end up surprising us.
Yeah, I personally know the person that recruited Russell Maryland Jr., a.k.a. RJ Maryland, to SMU, as I think you do as well, Chris. So we're both a little saddened that he will not get a chance to show off, his excellent genetics as well as his skills as a player in that game. A couple more games I want to hit on. So we talked about Penn State a little bit before. Penn State plays Wisconsin in a game that feels a little trappish to me. Penn State feels like the much better team. I just feel like they'll probably end up eventually pulling away, but I wouldn't be surprised if this game was very close at the half. And once again, Chris, what do you think? And are there any prospects that you are intrigued by in the Wisconsin-Penn State game?
Well, before the Alabama game, I had a 2nd-round grade on Ricardo Hallman and Hunter Wohler. They could go anywhere from the 3rd round to day 3 now. I think they'll both get drafted, but, I think the safety matchup, Kevin Watson Jr., Penn State, Hunter Wohler of Wisconsin, the 2 strong safeties on both teams, that is the matchup to watch, in my honest opinion. I think that's the most exciting matchup. And Penn State has a tight end in Theo Warren that can match up well with Wohler. I also like Penn State's receivers against Ricardo Hallman. I think that'll be fun. And how Aller reacts to this Wisconsin defense. Remember, Aller struggled on the road last year. He struggled against Michigan at home. He struggled against Ohio State on the road, and he struggled against Illinois on the road last year. This is like Aller's first big road test. People say West Virginia. West Virginia didn't play Penn State at night. They played him in the afternoon. I wouldn't call that a road test. Everybody knew Penn State was going to win. Everybody expected Penn State to win. This feels like Aller's first true road test. against the Wisconsin Badgers in Camp Randall on Saturday.
We can't say that if George Lopez was here, because of course he's a Trojan fan, and of course what Penn State went out and did in Los Angeles was a road test. But I've got Penn State absolutely walloping Pickle's Badgers. The Badgers really have struggled under Fickle, and I still don't like the hire. I don't think Fickle should have gone there. The Badgers do not rock Cap Randall the way that they should be, and I'm sorry, but the Penn State Nittany Lions will remain unbeaten.
Okay. I agree, but I think it's more of a 3-4 touchdown win than a 49-10 blowout like what Alabama did to Wisconsin. I think it's more of a 3 or 4 touchdown win rather than what Alabama did to Wisconsin, but Penn State wins.
Okay.
I'll go 28-13.
Okay, there we go. I'll go 31-20.
I'll take 34 for Penn State, and I'll give Wisconsin a grand total of 13 points. 34-13.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that, Greg.
We all got. Now I'm going to mention 2 games that matter a lot because, of course, they are traditional rivals who are facing each other. We're going to talk about Florida State, and then, of course, Kansas State. These are the kind of games that trophies, bragging rights, marriages, all kinds of things will be swinging in the balance in these games. We'll start with Miami, Florida State. So tell me, once again, I know there's some prospects you like, but tell me how you think the Miami, Florida State game plays out.
Who's playing Florida State?
Miami.
Is this the big ACC rivalry, the U versus Florida State, biggest rivalry in the ACC? Man, Cam Ward is going to destroy them. I'm going to go 49-20 Hurricanes. Seminoles actually find a way to get 20 points on Miami's defense with a quarterback as shaky as DJ Uiagalelei. And if they benched him for a freshman, that's good too. I don't think it'll matter. Miami will win though.
Okay. I don't really disagree. I think this is not that Cam Ward needs it, but if he is going to continue to maybe move into drafting position, to use a racing term, behind Austin Junty to have a legitimate shot to at least be invited to New York, this might be a game that helps. If he drops 5 total touchdowns on Florida State, even though it's a greatly diminished version of Florida State, I think it will help him because it's a game that a lot of people will watch. Greg, where are you on this game?
Miami just goes out and destroys this Florida State Seminoles team. This Seminoles team has got one edge rusher that I have as a late second, early third round pick, and that's it. That's all. I don't like anything about the Florida State offense whatsoever. It is horrible, and I'm just not sold on what Mr. Norvell has done for the Florida State Seminoles. So, unfortunately, Mr. Cristobal,
because it's us, right? I'm going to have to talk about at least a couple of FCS games.
Yeah, I mean, I have Cam Ward finishing with
meat of the schedule
yards,
is upon us.
314
sorry,
yards
Chris.
All right.
Let me unmute you. Sorry.
No, he's fine. Chris is fine.
Yeah, I just said Cam Ward's going to finish with 5 passing yards, 314. All right.
But I can no longer hear you.
What? Can you hear him?
Oh, there it is.
I can.
Oh, there we go.
I can hear both of you.
All right, there you go.
Yep, there it is. Now we're back. I have to hit on a couple of FCS games. There's some huge FCS games with huge implications. This game is big when nothing else is happening, but South Dakota State, first of all, they're both in the top 5, right? Number 3 versus number 4. These are South Dakota State's having rebound from a loss to an FCS opponent for the first time since Jimmy Rogers has been their coach. South Dakota State is now proving it belongs in the same conversation with both NDSU and South Dakota State. Montana State, of course, is good, but this is a huge, huge game. So in terms of running the ball, the Coyotes are number 7 in the FCS level with 232.6 yards rushing per game. They have Charles Pierre Jr., who already has 705 yards rushing, as well as rushing touchdowns. Trevor Thies has been injured, but is at least rumored to be returning to play this week. The Jackrabbits, on the other side, have limited opponents to 99.4 yards rushing per game, but have allowed over 100 in back-to-back games. This is going to be really, really good. Aiden Bauman is going to take shots down the field. He's had a really good season. Has a shot at maybe the Walter Payton Award. 69.8 completion percentage, 1,393 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, and they have a number 1 receiver who is near the top of the nation. And the quarterback number 1 in the nation in yards per attempt as a passer. Then Amar Johnson on Southern State side, not quite as many yards, as you find with Pierre, but very effective running back. Gronowski is a guy that I thought might have had a chance to be a late draftee last year, came back for an extra year. He's not quite having the spectacular season that some thought he might, but still solid. 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,221 yards passing, 61.3 completion percentage. So moderate but solid play for the most part. There's a lot going into this game. It'll have something to say about the Walter Payton Award, something to say about seeding for their plan. What do you think of that game, Chris? And once again, are there any prospects that you like?
I haven't really done as much FCS scouting as I should have this year. I know North Dakota State is a left tackle or an offensive lineman that could be in the Senior Bowl. I haven't really looked at South Dakota State as much as I should have.
Okay.
So I really don't have anything else to add to the show, but I appreciate you and Greg for having me on, Bill.
Of course. Do you have to run now, or you have like 5 more minutes?
I can stay till 8:45, but I really don't have anything I'm going to add to the conversation because I haven't really studied the FCS games as much as you have. I can learn though.
Okay. Well, then I'll run through some things, and if there's a prospect you like, because some of these guys are transfers, you may have seen them in their previous homes, even if you might not see them in their current homes. There's a lot of that going around this year, right? I need a flow chart to keep track of where some guys are playing. Oh, wait, weren't you at Baylor? Western Carolina at Mercer. If Donovan were here, he'd be here to talk up Mercer, where he got his degree. Mercer was undefeated until last year, where the Bulldogs of Samford stunned them in a 55-35 upset. And frankly, it was not even that close. Samford looked amazing, partially due to turnovers, partially due to injuries, but they built a 42-7 first half lead and just coasted from there onward. They could have beat them worse if they wanted to. But Mercer is still a top 15 team in the FCS. The big question is the health of DJ Smith, their quarterback, who got hurt last week against freshman Whit Neubauer is going to probably get the start. He's looked decent, 63.6 complete percentage, 214 yards, and 1 touchdown in limited action so far. But if DJ Smith can come back, that helps a lot. Even if Smith doesn't get the start, if he's able to come in and play, it helps. And then Mercer is going to also have to overcome some things about the Catamounts of Western Carolina. Wayne McGee is a guy who's had a good season, 519 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, but they don't have a lot of depth. No other running back on their team has over 135 yards.
You know what? Give me Mercer, Bill. I'm going to take Mercer. Okay. I know I'm probably going to be wrong on this game, but
you're probably right.
Mercer does have a first-round prospect in this year's MLS draft, so give me Mercer over Samford. Is that the game?
There you go. There you go. I love it. Cross sports logic. I'll just mention that Cole Gonzalez is one of the top.
I need to find out from Chris here which future NFL kickers are on the field at this game right now, because of course we all know that Brandon Aubrey is a former.
Oh, Brandon Aubrey was a Notre Dame center back. I mean,
I've
seen Pitt against Notre Dame in the tournament games. I could see Louis Samkow being an NFL kicker. I mean, he's very good for Pittsburgh, the striker who took over for Valentin Noel. Like, the player comps for him are ridiculous. They're comparing him to Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan. I don't agree with that, but this is coming from MLS scouts who might argue.
Well, there you go. See that we can always cross over to the NFL from the world of soccer now.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you, I guess, a couple of prospects then. Guys to watch that'll be in that game. There is a wide receiver for Western Carolina who broke out this season, and his name is DeAndre Tamarez.
Tavares, yeah.
Yep. He's listed at 5'11". He's probably 5'10", but whatever. No big deal to me. I don't care that much. But he's quick, tough, has terrific hands. He's a redshirt sophomore, so he's not going to be in this year's draft, but he's listed at 165. That's probably about right. He's not big, but tough as nails for a guy his size. I'm not about to compare him to Antonio Brown, but I'm going to say he has a similar package of skills to Antonio Brown, right? He's a guy that runs faster than he'll time, plays bigger than he'll measure, and super competitive. Super competitive. I'd love to see him return kickoffs and punts, but I think they probably don't do that with him because they don't want to get too dinged up. But he ran track in high school. You can see that he's got really good ability to accelerate. He has a cousin who's playing football right now in Colorado named Nigel Cattell Jr. And before they got him off of the return game, he was a really good return specialist. So I think at the next level, he'll go back to returning kicks. But if you don't have him on your radar, put him on your radar. Add him to your list. I'll give you that guy.
Yep. And current Riverhound striker, former Pitt soccer player, Edward Keys, drafted by Rob Kraft in the first round, just walked past me. So just update on that. Edward Keys, nice. He was drafted by the Revolution in the first round of the 21 MLS draft. So he's on the Riverhounds now. But Rob Kraft did spend a first-round pick on him in MLS. But, yeah, I like Western Carolina, I guess. I'll take them to win this one.
I'm going to give you one more player to watch out for to add to your list. Western Carolina's quarterback, Cole Gonzalez. Once again, not going to be in this year's draft, but add him to your list for next year. And he's a guy that I'm not trying to, send him to a different school, but I will not be surprised if ACC schools and SEC schools come sniffing around him. He's a Florida kid, had a terrific high school career back in Florida. His father is a well-known coach who coaches wide receivers at Florida. I'm not saying, but I'm saying don't be surprised if he's in the SEC. If not there, then someplace else. But I could see him in the ACC as well. But he's only a little knock on him his size. He's listed at 6 feet. He's probably 5'11 and a half. Probably about 194 pounds. But he's got a good enough arm. My comp for him is Jake Haener. That's my comp for him. He's very Haener-esque. If you like Haener, you'll like him. But watch out for him. He's playing at an extremely high level right now for Western Carolina. So put him on your list for next year.
All right.
I'll give you one more, and then I guess we can wave goodbye to you. Where I first fell in love with Cam Ward was in his days at Incarnate Word. I still watch Incarnate Word football. Incarnate Word is now about to face SCLA, the Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana got off to a very bad start, but now they've righted the ship. They've won 3 games back-to-back and are undefeated in conference. They're going to obviously have a tough time facing Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word's won 4 consecutive games since they lost to South Dakota State and then SIU. Zach Calzada, speaking of transfers, right? You remember Calzada, has found his way now. Has found his way now there to there. He's having a very good season. 66.9 completion percentage, 1,867 yards, 18 passing touchdowns. The Cardinals have some dynamic weapons for Calzada. Jalen Walshall and Roy Alexander, add those guys to your list. They've combined for over 1,200 yards receiving, over 13 receiving touchdowns. But this is where the meeting of the whatevers, the passing defense of Southeast Louisiana is very, very good. Watch out for Keydre Callaghan and Tylon Cooper. So a good on good, right? Walshall and Alexander on the offense. versus Keydre Callaghan and Tylon Cooper for the Lions of Southeast Louisiana. The Cartwoods defense has struggled at times early in the year. They'll need to try to stop the run. The Lions will also be leaning heavily on Antonio Martin Jr., who has 1,088 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns already. Very productive kid. He's got a lot going for him. Time speed is a question mark. Obviously, I wish I could confidently say what I think he runs. He's not a terribly big back. He doesn't get caught from behind, but I would say he's probably a guy who's probably mid 4.5s, maybe low 4.5s. I'd love to see him catch the ball more, but I say that about almost all college running backs. But the good thing about him is his build. He's got a very solid build. He is listed at 220, probably more like 217, but listed at 5'11, probably more like 5'10 and a quarter. But still, very solid build, just a sophomore and incredibly productive. I think he could end up being a target for some schools, once again, some bigger schools trying to bring him in. And if he has a big year next year at a larger school, I could see him being in next year's draft. But he's a one to put on your watch list as well. He's one of the starting running backs right now on what I call my all emerging team. He's busted out this year, and I think that he has a real chance to, like I said, be drafted next year. Before you run, Chris, or actually, anything else you wanted to talk about before you run?
I mean, I think one of the surprise games this week. I'm trying to think of what was the game I was going to talk about on. I know there was a game. Oh, did you guys see Liberty lose to Kennesaw State? That was hilarious. Yeah. I was actually live streaming part of that during Wednesday's Under the Bleachers show, which I do with William Yanish and Brandis Bell. That was hilarious. I mean, that might be the upset of the year, guys.
It might be, actually. It's in the running. If it's not
I'm sorry, but Northern Illinois beating my Fighting Irish was the upset of the year. That was,
Alabama fans might take issue with you as well, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, the finalists have to be Vanderbilt, Northern Illinois, and Kennesaw State.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
correct. But yeah, so I'm telling you to add Antonio Martin Jr. of Southeast Louisiana. Add him to your watch list. He's going to be playing for somebody next year. Hopefully, if you're a Southeast Louisiana fan, maybe he stays a Lion, but I won't be shocked if some bigger school comes knocking. He has a lot of the qualities you look for in a future NFL running back.
Yep.
Perfect.
Chris, before you go, tell people where they can find your work and follow you.
At Draft Utopia, you can check out the new MLS mock draft. It is pinned. We have Cornell forward Alex Harris going number 1 overall. I mean, this guy gets triple teamed and he still finds a way to score goals. 4.0 GPA in high school. I mean, he gets his teammates open. He's majoring in chemical engineering or something, just really advanced. I mean, he blew me. I saw him on another YouTuber's Kick a Ball Pod, his interview. He blew me away in the interview process. So I think 2 seasons of 12 goals and 4 assists. I think everything's there. I mean, I don't know if there's a box he doesn't check right now, but it'll be interesting to see if Ivy Leaguer can go number 1 in the MLS, because it's not going to happen in football anytime soon. It's not going to happen in the NBA. Probably not going to happen in Major League Baseball with how good the SEC's become in baseball. And we know it's not going to happen in hockey unless maybe the top pick in the NHL draft commits to Harvard, which is a long shot, but in theory that could happen. So if an Ivy Leaguer is going to go number 1 overall, it's probably going to be in the MLS. And it's a good chance to be Alex Harris. I'll explain why on my show tomorrow at 10 a.m. on TalkShoe and Restream. So thank you, guys.
Nice,
well,
Chris.
Thank you. If you aren't following Chris, if you're into the NFL draft, once again, get your life right? Pull it together. You should be following Chris. If you're into the NFL draft, follow Chris.
Which MLS team do you follow, Chris?
My favorite MLS team is the LA Galaxy, but I think Miami's going to win the cup this year. I think Beckham's going to beat the Galaxy in the MLS Cup, and it's going to be It's going to be the year of David Beckham with Messi winning the Cup at season's end.
See, because I'm a Liverpool guy, I don't like Manchester United. Period. So I'm sorry, but I gotta say the Galaxy have to beat that guy. I'm sorry, but
Miami might not even win the conference. I mean, the East is really deep this year. You got Columbus, last year's champions. You got last year's Supporter Shield, FC Cincinnati, and you got Duncan McGuire from Creighton on Orlando City SC. They're the 4 seed. Whoever comes out of that East 1 through 4 is probably beating the Galaxy in the Cup. But if you don't like David Beckham, you got to root for Orlando in round 2. You've got to root for Atlanta United, Arthur Blank's team. They are playing David Beckham tomorrow night. So you got. I think they're playing tonight. Actually, they're playing.
Yeah, because of course Messi and the Argentinians pulled off a stunt against Canada in the CONCACAF that was just garbage too. So, that was terrible. But again, I really do wish you well with your MLS shows and Draft Utopia on Twitter. And you take care of yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Take it easy.
All right, take care. Bill, you're on mute, I think. I think you're on mute again. No, I can't hear you. Huh.
Hear me now?
Now I hear you.
Yep. I just had to change my mic settings.
There you go.
Yep. Just mic settings issue. Okay. So it's just 2 of us for our final game of the evening. So,
it's not going to be Eastern Washington versus Idaho, is it?
No. Unless you want to talk about that game? I was going to mention.
No, I really don't because it's not going to be a pretty game.
No, sir, it's not. I was going to mention, as MEAC conference play is underway, Morgan State travels to the 20th ranked North Carolina Central Eagles. Now, Walker Harris, in his first season as a starter, is completing 63.5% of his passes for 1,116 yards passing, 14 touchdowns. But he's going to face a Morgan State secondary that's only allowing an average of 122.9 yards passing per game this season, which is number 1 in the MEAC and is top 16 in the country. They've battled injuries, but if they are healthy-ish, this would be a good game. Also, NC Central's offensive line is going to face a Morgan State front 7 that has some guys who I think have a chance to play at the next level, principally Elijah Williams, who I've written about preseason. Elijah Williams is an NFL prospect. I've discussed him a little bit with Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl. Shout out to him. I'm hoping he's one of the HBCU players that gets invited to the Senior Bowl. He has 6.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. Nana Asante has 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. The Eagles, however, only allowed 12 sacks so far this season, which is number 2 in the MEAC. Your classic strength-on-strength kind of matchup. One team got off to a really slow start. Another team got off to a hotter, faster start, but they're sort of meeting at sort of similar places at this point in the season. Morgan State has had offensive inconsistency. They're not good, I guess, the ruling on offense. They've had some occasional moments on offense, but they haven't put it all together. That's really the issue. They have another 2 players to watch out for are Quantez Mansfield for the Eagles on defense and Jackie Brevard, also both linebackers.
Yep,
they're good. Morgan State's chances in this game center around their elite defense. Their offense is what's held them back this year, cost them at least 2 games. And if they cannot get offensive momentum, the Eagles will wear them down eventually on defense and pull away. And that's what I think ends up happening. I think that is about a 20.
Isn't there a linebacker to Morgan State who could be a transfer portal guy for next year?
You are correct. Look at you knowing stuff. Yes,
sir. I know, but I'm trying to remember the guy's name, and it just escapes me.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, these are teams that have good players on defense, and one of them has good players also on offense. But it's a team that's sort of all defense, versus a team that's a little more balanced. And when I see a team that's all polarized on one side of the ball, I usually go with the team that's more balanced. So NC Central, which is higher ranked, but also just more balanced, is the team I think prevailing. I'm going to say about 27 to, I'm going to say 27-17. I think they pull it out by about 10 points. I think they have some rocky moments, but I think they end up prevailing. The other game that
Mercer's defense is a very solid group. That is without question, and of course their offense absolutely bites. Mike McCarthy is running that offense. That's what it is. It's McCarthy's offense, and we all know that offense sucks.
Yeah, that was the game that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Another one that's sort of putting in my back pocket. It's not on the front page, but I'm sort of watching it with some interest, partially because it's in my old backyard. Is William & Mary and Stony Brook?
Yep.
The CAA is a mess. They have 8 teams that are 2-1 in conference or better. So you can't afford to lose. And they already had an upset loss to Towson State, or I guess they're just Towson. I guess they dropped the state. But they rebounded to beat the Campbell Camels. The Seawolves lost to Villanova, but got a big win over Towson, the same Towson, of course, that knocked off William & Mary. Tyler Knoop unlocked Stony Brook's offense, and he had a tremendous performance, 34 of 40 for 387 passing yards. If I still had my Nutty Awards, he would have been a Nutty Awards winner at the FBS level.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out something to call our weekly awards again, but I don't know what worked with NBS. I'll figure something out. But he was fantastic. 387 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. I thought it was the most impressive quarterbacking of the week at any level of college football. Yeah, he was. And their offense went from kind of, once again, inconsistent, sputtering to amazing. Watch out for quarterback Jalen Jones, who is number one in the country. Number one in the country in pass breakups. Leads a secondary that's number 2 in the CAA with 7 interceptions. William & Mary's number 3 in rushing offense. They run the ball very well and a lot. They average 275 yards per game. And they're not a triple option offense. Like that, bears repeating. This is a non-triple option offense that averages 275 yards rushing per game. That's nuts. They are 0-2, however, when they rush for less than 170 yards. I mean, that is clearly the whole shooting match is them running the ball. If you could make them ineffective running the ball because they do not do well when they have to pass it. You get through the 3rd and 6 or more, and you really have them up, over a barrel. Bronson Yoder, who I talked about preseason, is a future professional. Malachi Emo has had a pretty good year as well. Combined, they're over 1,000 yards together and over 13 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Stony Brook has struggled against the run, so this is what gives William & Mary, obviously life and hope. So
you got Brock's opinion, you got Chris's opinion, and my opinion on the Boise State UNLV game.
I do. Yep.
Who do you have winning the Broncos versus the Running Rebels?
As much as I hate to go against my co-host, I do think that Boise State, once again, balance. I think when I look at 2 teams, and I see the team is more balanced. Can they run the ball and pass the ball? Can they defend the run and defend the pass? If the answer is yes to all 4, and the answer is not yes to all 4 for the other team. Now, UNLV is also a solid team. They run the ball.
Yes, they are.
Better than average, not as well as, say, Boise State, obviously. They can pass the ball. They have maybe a little more dynamic, because of Ricky White, a little more dynamic talent on the outside, on the edges. Unlike Boise State's defense, still a little bit more, though UNLV's defense has improved dramatically over what it was in the past. I feel like it's a close game, though. I feel like it's a very close game. I think this is like about a 4-point game. I'm going to say 24-28.
Okay, because I've got Boise State winning that 35-31.
Okay, so we both see a 4-point game. You just see a slightly higher overall score.
Yes, because Ashton Genty needs to have more yards and more touchdowns to knock off that Barry Sanders clown. Who, Barry Sanders was fine, but he was not the same level that Emmitt Smith was. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right there, Greg. Simmer down. Once again, I'm just to remind everybody that the views, thoughts, emotions, and words of one Gregory Rector do not reflect, as a whole, the thoughts, views, or as any of the policies of Team MBS Media. They are
No,
clearly
exactly.
his own thoughts, his own views, and his own feelings. Once again, I want to thank Chris Ransom. Chris is always an awesome guest whenever he can make his way on. We'll have him on again when we get closer to the draft, because by that point, we'll be putting together mock drafts and that kind of foolishness. But once again, on behalf of Brock, who is giving us our right in the seats, right in the press box perspective, which you'll see on our website when he drops his article. I'm working on some stuff. My first cut of rankings for the 2-3 positions that I feel good enough about to start writing about. You'll start seeing those soon. And once again, I want to thank you all for everybody who's ever liked, subscribed, whoever watched, whoever listened, whoever commented. Thank you so much for your attention and your time. We will see you again in 1 week. Greg, thank you so much. And we are OUT. We are out of here.